Welcome to Bet Parx Saturday on PHLY Sports. I'm your host, Jeff Skversky, live on the PHLY Sports YouTube channel, along with my producer, Andrew Frazier. Now, you're going to have to take me back a few years on this. Andrew's not going to be on camera. He's kind of like, remember that character Wilson on Home Improvement? That is our Andrew today. We may jump in and talk to Andrew, but we have so much to talk about. How about the Lions, Eagles, Sunday Night Football tomorrow? Can you wait for that one? We're going to get into the Eagles, of course, the A.J. Brown situation, all of that drama going on with the Eagles' #1 receiver. And we have a jam-packed show, lots of guests to talk to. We're going to talk to Phillies legend Larry Bowa about the Phillies offseason, everything going on there, as well as the Darren Daulton Foundation, still raising a lot of money for a great cause years and years after the passing of the beloved Darren Daulton. We're going to talk to Lions legend Lomas Brown. He has great insight on the A.J. Brown situation, as well as some great stories of what it was like as a player coming here to Philadelphia. And you may remember this, but Lomas Brown, the Lions legend who blocked for Barry Sanders, during the '95 playoffs, he came in here and made a prediction that the Lions are going to beat up on the Birds. Well, guess what? They got destroyed. The Eagles won that playoff matchup. And he has a great story about a 12-year-old fan giving it to Lomas Brown. So that's going to be a great matchup. And the other guest today, we're going to have Omar Ruiz from NFL Network. He's going to give that national perspective on the Eagles. I know we're in this bubble here in Philadelphia, coming off that Green Bay game, and depending on what side you're on here, a lot of people upset with the Birds in that game. So we're going to talk to Omar about the national perspective of the Eagles. Are we too much of in a bubble? Are we too negative about the Eagles? At the end of the day, they're 7-2. And we're also going to talk to Brad Feinberg, the pro sports betting analyst. He is going to join us in a few minutes, as well as we get into the Philadelphia Eagles and some of those bets going on here from Parx Casino in Bensalem. By the way, I remember this place when I was a kid growing up in Bensalem. This didn't even exist. The beer garden and the sports book and the casino, this wasn't even here. On the weekends, there would be flea markets. Okay, and I would go and collect baseball cards. There'd be baseball card vendors. Andrew, do you remember any of this?
I do not, no.
No, okay, I'm dating myself here.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit, all right. But it's a beautiful casino, great place, lots of action, very lively today. Speaking of lively, the conversation around Eagles receiver A.J. Brown, to me, it's just too much. And look, I think A.J. Brown has a great point, but I don't need to hear it. Andrew doesn't need to hear it. Eagles fans don't need to hear it. He's not wrong with what he's saying, but I believe his approach is wrong, trying to fix the situation. It's really, in my opinion, no one's business to know what's going on inside that locker room and inside that building. And it's great for media, it's great for fans, but I think it's detrimental to this football team. And if you think about last year, Brandon Graham came in and he really kind of spilled the beans on the tension between A.J. and Jalen Hurts. And I look at it like this. The Eagles' offense is going to be fine. And I know when you look at the stats right now, they're, what are they, 25th in passing offense, 23rd in total offense. It's horrible. They need to be fixed. Am I worried? No. And I realize we're deep into the season. But I look at it like this with the A.J. Brown situation. Just shut up and play football. Just shut up and play football. And I realize that may be a harsh stance to saying shut up and play football when you talk about your #1 receiver. But that is really the point. I mean, the guy has made $92 million. Nobody wants to hear you complaining. Andrew, do you want to hear A.J. Brown complaining about his job?
I'd rather not. No, I'd like to see him just play football. I'd like that locker room to be cohesive and working together and, win some games here. Because we want to see some games won here in Philadelphia.
They have won games, though. I mean, they have won 7 of 9 to start the season. You're not going to win every game. Now, granted, the Giants Thursday night game opposite the Phillies in the playoffs, that was an ugly game. But they're always going to win a game they're not supposed to win. They're always going to lose a game they're not supposed to lose. But I look at it like this. A.J. Brown, shut up, play football. And listen, I think A.J.'s a great guy. It's just the way he's going about it. In a lot of ways, it reminds me of the Terrell Owens situation. And T.O. was on Fox 29 on Good Day yesterday with Mike Jerrick and Alex Holly, and he was saying that it's not like his situation. It is different. And I agree with him there that it is a little bit different than his situation. His was more contract-based, and I know there was a lot of drama years ago with Donovan McNabb, but A.J. Brown's situation is a little bit different. At the same time, it's not. He's causing a distraction. And Jalen Hurts said this week, we cannot let it become a distraction. And you saw just a little bit of a glimpse into how Jalen Hurts feels reading between the tea leaves there, which is, it is bothering the locker room. I think it is bothering Nick Sirianni. You could tell that he was getting frustrated with the questions and the conversation surrounding this team. And if you knew nothing about the Philadelphia Eagles and were just listening to what was going on with the Philadelphia Eagles, you would think this team is 2-7, not 7-2 as the number 1 seed going into the Sunday night game against the Detroit Lions. Look, trying to force A.J. Brown the football is bad news because then the defenses are going to know what happens. And I go back to that Terrell Owens situation, and he said yesterday on Fox 29 on the Good Day show, he's like, I understand. He said, quote, I truly understand where he's coming from. And he's not doing anything wrong. And I could not disagree with Terrell Owens more because what he's doing wrong is becoming a distraction. This is becoming a sideshow. The Eagles are going to be just fine. And if he wants to take those complaints inside the meeting rooms, inside Jeffrey Lurie's office, inside Nick Sirianni's office, that's fine. There's no issue with that because they are trying to get it fixed. And this offense should be a lot better because they've been awful. But at the end of the day, they're winning games. And this whole debate over Jalen Hurts, top 5 quarterback, throw it out the window. Who cares? He's winning games. This team, I always say, let's just enjoy this run. And I know the offense has been painful and you want to get A.J. the ball. They're going to figure this out. But again, the problem with forcing A.J. the ball, when Jalen Hurts has 2.7 seconds, by the way, the most of any quarterback in pocket time, you're going to hurt yourself. It then becomes predictable. And there's this debate whether Kevin Patullo should lose the play calling duties like they did in Detroit last week. Dan Campbell, the Lions head coach, took it away from offensive coordinator John Morton, and then they had this explosion against the Commanders, and they're going to come in here into Philadelphia. They're on their way now to Philadelphia for Sunday Night Football. They're taking it away. But look, Nick Sirianni, he was asked about it a few weeks ago. He's not taking play calling duties away from Kevin Patullo, at least yet. We'll see if that changes. Something does have to change with this offense, Andrew. There's no question about something has to change with this offense. But again, A.J. Brown voicing it publicly, I think, is a problem.
Yeah, and if this Eagles team was in a different situation, right? If they had a losing record, you would look at A.J. Brown and what he's doing as like a leadership role. He's bringing out what's the problem with the team. He's calling out the offense. He's calling out Kevin Patullo and the stagnant play calling. He's calling out Jalen Hurts and his inability to sometimes find him downfield. So if this team was in a different situation, you would say, hey, AJ's right. You know, he is right for what he's doing. But they are a winning team. They are, and right now it's not something that this locker room needs. It's a headache that everybody has to deal with. From Nick Sirianni to the players to all the coaches, everybody has to deal with this week in, week out. And they don't want to. And it's a burden that he's putting onto the team. It's something that could be done maybe behind closed doors, a conversation that they can be having internally. But to be out there in the media doing what he's doing, I just believe that it's just not the right time. And going into the whole TO thing, look, we're not going to get the workout session in the driveway, right? I don't think that's going to happen.
That was amazing.
That it was amazing. I don't think that's going to happen with A.J. Brown. I don't think he's that much of a TO.
It wouldn't be the worst thing. I mean, the guy is absolutely ripped.
Of course. I think A.J. understands a little more than to do something like that. But they have an opportunity here to, kind of right the ship a little bit. And with this game being as big as it is with the Lions, this is a test for them. It's a really good defense. It's a great offense. And I think with this being a measuring stick that it is, if they can find ways to get, not just AJ, but everybody involved in this offense, whether it's Saquon, it's Dallas, it's Devontae, they could really show themselves as a strong contender for this Super Bowl. And hopefully it will just kind of mute a little bit of these conversations that are going inside the locker room.
We're talking with Andrew Frazier, our producer here on PHLY, as we're live from Parx Casino in Bensalem. And to that point, nobody else is complaining on this football team, at least publicly. And these passive-aggressive tweets and social media posts and playing video games, and I get his sense of humor. And again, I like A.J. Brown. I think he's a really good guy, and I commend him years ago for what he did, coming out speaking against his mental health and trying to be an advocate for mental health, talking about how he was at a point when he was with the Titans before coming and being traded to the Eagles that he nearly took his own life. He was in a dark place, and now he's an advocate for mental health. I like A.J. Brown, but just keep it inside the building, right? You don't need this distraction. And look, this football team, I believe, is the #1 team in the NFL. I don't care what the records say. They are 7-2, atop of the NFC. I think they're the best team in football. They're better than the Colts. They are better than the Patriots. I think they're better than the Lions. And I look at this team as an elite football team. And that is my next thing, where you ask yourselves, is this an elite football team? I say absolutely. We're in a bubble here. Everybody's complaining. You would think this team, again, is 2-7, not 7-2. Think about this. They are 25-5 since the start of last season, best in the NFL. They've won 13 of 15. Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts, 28-11 on the road since Nick took over as the head coach. That is the best in the NFL. Even President Donald Trump, whatever you think politically, however you stand with your politics, even Donald Trump this week called Nick Sirianni a great head coach, for whatever it's worth. The Eagles are a great football team, and I always say, let's enjoy this. I mean, I grew up with a really bad run, and I just say, enjoy this. You've won 2 Super Bowls in the last, 8 years. The Phillies won the World Series in 2008. It's been an unbelievable run since really 2000, really since Andy Reid took over, this amazing run with the Eagles. There's been a few bad years in there, but it's been this amazing run. Can we just enjoy this amazing run? This football team is elite. They have not played up to their potential, but I believe they are going to be back in the Super Bowl. And there's not a better team than the Philadelphia Eagles. And if you think about where they stand right now, they're doing so, and they haven't played their best football. So what does that say? To think this football team is going to go the entire season without the offense clicking, it's not going to happen. You don't hear Saquon Barkley complaining. You don't hear Devontae Smith complaining. You don't hear anyone else, even Jalen Hurts, really complaining. They haven't played up to their standard. I think they will going forward. Again, here, Jeff Skversky from Parx Casino in Bensalem on Parx Saturday, presented by PHLY Sports on their YouTube page, here with Andrew Frazier. Wanted to check in, see, do we have Brad Feinberg? Yes, we do. So let's bring in Brad Feinberg, our pro sports betting analyst, our first guest today. We're going to get to Lomas Brown, the Lions legend, in a moment, as well as Larry Bowa and Omar Ruiz. But we're going to start with Brad Feinberg, the pro sports betting analyst. Brad, how are you?
Jeff, great to be on the air. How you been? Good to see you.
I'm doing well. Brad, a great follow on X. Follow him at Brad's Best Bets. So, Brad, the Eagles 2.5-point favorites over the Lions, Sunday Night Football. Now, I want you to break this down for me. These may be remedial questions, but for all of the viewers out there that have no idea what I just said, when I say they're 2.5-point favorites, can you explain what that means? And I know that's a very simple and basic question.
Yeah, no problem, Jeff. Yeah, and you know, it's actually good that you say that, because I know there's actually people watching who enjoy this and maybe even want to learn about sports gambling, but you're afraid to ask that. And so, yeah, let me help you out there. It's basically simple as this: you take the Eagles, and it says -2.5, right?
And so yeah, Brad, like when I see -2.5, I think someone that doesn't know nothing about sports gambling is going to go, they're the underdog.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. Dude, all you do is, it's off the final score. So for everyone watching, let's put, you say, okay, I like the Eagles -2.5. What does that mean? If the Eagles finish with 30 points, what you do is you subtract 2.5 points from the total. And let's say they have that 30 minus 2.5. Don't need my Michigan education. Tell me that's 27.5. Okay. So they finish with 27.5. So if the Lions finish with 27 or lower, you win. Finish with 28 or higher, you lose. So if the score is 30-28, and you're laying 2.5, you have a minus 2.5, you're a half point short. Conversely, if they win 30-27 and you're minus 2.5, you're winning by a half point. And there's also stuff, Jeff, called the money line, where sometimes people don't want to deal with the points. But you know what? I think the Eagles are going to win, but I don't care. I don't want them to win by 1 or 100. Well, they tax you for that. But, as opposed to laying 2.5 minus 110, you maybe on a game like that, maybe you have to lay minus 150, but you don't have to lay any points. So if they win by 1 or 2, you're still covered. Parx has you covered in any way possible. You could bet it in any way you could ever come up with. Trust me, I look every day. Any bet you could possibly want, Parx has. But anyway, but yeah, in this game, Jeff, interesting game. The line opened, Jeff, at 1, and I really thought that was too low. I thought this line would close at 2.5, minus 120 for Philadelphia, or maybe 3 plus 120 for Detroit. It has since moved that way. A lot of sharp money's coming in on Philadelphia. For me, this game is a tougher game, personally. It was really cold weather, Jeff. Really ice cold, bitter December, everything. And then I would really like the Eagles. But because maybe it's not going to be that severe kind of weather, going to lean here, Philadelphia, for me, but it's just the lean. Because golf has really not played well a lot of these games, Jeff, outdoors, as you know, following sports the way you do. This Detroit team in a controlled environment is good as anyone, but not controlled environment, definitely takes a little bit off their, what they offer.
That's a great point. I know the Lions have talked about that last year, that, they can't win in the cold and all that other stuff. So when the line moves like that, right now the Eagles are 2.5 point favorites, but when the line moves like that, what does that tell you?
Yeah, but again, it's interesting. Now, for the Super Bowl, for everyone watching, when you see a line move in the Super Bowl, let's first the line moves from -1 to -2. That could be your grandmother betting it. And what do I mean by that? The volume of money in the Super Bowl is so high that recreational money can move the line, Jeff. Okay? It doesn't make a difference who's betting it. As long as you have money, if you're betting it, the sports books are going to move it. But in a regular season game, if my grandmother, may she rest in peace, but if she were to bet this Eagles Lions game, if she were to bet it for $200,000, a respected sports book that's sharp isn't going to move that bet. But if someone who knows what they're doing, who is sharp, bets it, let's say for 5,000, okay, nowhere near 200,000, they'll move that game from -1.5 to -2, knowing that it came from a respected source. So during the regular season, a lot of times it's not how much is bet, it's who bets it, Jeff.
All right, so let's get into this over-under situation. Eagles, Lions tomorrow. The over-under is 46.5. Now, the way the Eagles played against the Packers, you're going, all right, wait a minute here. There's no way it's going to go over. There's no way. But, both of these teams really have the ability. I mean, you look at the Lions. I mean, the Lions, look, Dan Campbell took away play calling from their offensive coordinator, John Morton, and they are 7th. They're a top 10 offense. The Eagles, are they going to come out of their shell? You never know when that game's going to be. Could it come against the Lions? But when you look at that 46.5 over-under, is it easy to take the under based on what the Eagles did last week against the Green Bay Packers?
For me, Jeff, no. Actually, I'd be on the other side of this one personally. I lean over, actually. Yeah, I do.
Why is that?
Look, well, again, first of all, we know... To me, and I was on Anthony Gargano's show the other day, and I said to him, the Eagles' offense, with Jalen Hurts specifically, Jeff, do you remember back in the day, do you remember Jack Morris and Dave Stewart?
Of course. Dave Stewart, former Philly.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
That was a bad trade, by the way.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. But Jack Morris, remember, he'd pitch a game, and if the other team scored 5, he'd allow 4. The other team scored 6, he'd allow 5. Their team, though, his team scored 1, he'd shut them out. If his team scored 2, he'd allow 1. He did exactly what he needed to do. Like, is he just lucky or what is it? And he's obviously wasn't like Pedro Martinez, Steve Carlton good, but he made the Hall of Fame because he was just he was a winner. And honestly, I do think there's something to that. And with Jalen Hurts, I kind of think he's a little bit like that same way, Jeff, where how many games have you seen the Eagles, Jeff, when they need to score 30 points but they score 7 or like they did last week or 10?
Well, you know, it's interesting, Brad, because we were talking about the A.J. Brown situation before. Now, the game A.J. Brown did not play, the Eagles score a season-high 38 points. They put up, 400-plus yards of offense, by far their best offensive performance, and that's without A.J. Brown. Now, look, it came against the Giants, and the Giants stink. Having said that, you go, nobody's bigger than the team. Of course, they're a better team with A.J. Brown. I don't want to misconstrue any of that. But, look, the Eagles do have the ability to score 40 points. And, look, so do the Lions. You look at what the Lions have done this season. They are explosive. Jamison Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Both these teams have the ability to put up close to 100 points combined.
Yeah, no, Jeff, that's kind of where I'm coming at. I'm coming more from that perspective. And to me, actually, you can argue that the Lions are the best offense in the NFL. I don't think, in fact, I probably would think come playoff time, and again, this is the team, again, maybe not so much outside of the dome, but this is the team with the weapons they have. I know Laporta's out this week, but with Laporta, the 2 big wide receivers, back in the day, Jeff, you remember the thunder and lightning of Charlie Garner and Ricky Waters. This is like the big man's version of that. As good as Charlie Garner was, one of my all-time favorite Eagles, Jahmyr Gibbs is just that much better.
He is. He's a beast. And he was the NFC Offensive Player of the Week this week. Gibbs and David Montgomery. And, the thing about David Montgomery, he does a lot of stuff that it doesn't show up in the stat sheet. So that is an explosive offense Vic Fangio is going to have trouble with. I do want to ask you, so you're going to go in this game with the over, correct?
I lean over because, again, I actually think I would be surprised if, going back to what I said about Jalen, I'd be surprised if the Eagles hold this team to less than 20 points.
Okay.
So if I'm correct in that analysis and Detroit scores 20 plus, whether it's 20 or 27, whatever it is, then that means if I'm correct in my analysis, which I think I will be, I don't think the Eagles are just going to lay an egg and score 7 points here and just.
Oh, let's hope not. There'll be a lot of complaints around here next week if that's the case.
No, and again, Detroit's defense to me is gettable. They can make some sacks with Aiden Hutchinson for sure. But this defense is very gettable. I think both teams scored north of 20 here. And again, if they both are scoring north of 20, pretty good chance they're going to get to where I need to get to for that over. And again, I think this will be a higher scoring game. I actually think both offenses will have success. I think Eagles find a way to win a close game here. I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be tight, very close. But I actually think it's going to be higher scoring than maybe people think. Because I actually do think the Eagles can have some success.
All right, last thing for you. Looking around, whether it's college football, whether it's pro football, this weekend, what is your favorite underdog or your favorite bet this weekend that you like?
Well, Jeff, I have a bunch of them. I'm just going to give you a few if it's okay.
Just a few. Yeah.
I like Minnesota laying 2.5 against Chicago. I think they're a very fake team, Chicago, Jeff. I think Minnesota wins that one easily. I think the Falcons handle Carolina in a revenge spot. They lose 30-0 like 5 weeks ago. I think Carolina, another fake team in my opinion. I think Atlanta wins that one by serious margin. And Jeff, again, I think it's just 50-50. Seattle Rams, I don't know who's going to win. I don't pretend to know who's going to win. But that line should not be 3.5 points. Give me Seattle and me. And a coin flip is like going to the Parx Casino and you getting red or black and there's no green. And someone says, I'm going to give you, plus 135 on that. I'll take either black or red. I don't care. Because to me, that's a 50-50 game.
All right, Brad Feinberg, pro sports betting analyst. We appreciate you joining us here on this Saturday, just hours away from Sunday Night Football. Eagles-Lions, cannot wait for that game. Again, Eagles 2.5-point favorites over the Lions. Thank you, Brad. Always a great follow on Twitter. Brad's Best Bets, or on X,
thanks,
whatever
Jeff,
you want to call it.
I appreciate you, Jeff.
All right.
Good luck, everyone out there.
All right, thanks, Brad. Interesting there that Brad, when he talks about this game, he likes the over. And, you just think to what the Eagles did last week against the Lions, and you're going, there's no way, even though the Eagles and the Lions have that capability. All right, so let's switch gears. And when we talk about this Eagles-Lions matchup, I caught up with Lions legend Lomas Brown, former Lions star. He's in their Hall of Fame. You know, he is their now radio analyst. He's kind of like the Mike Quick of their radio broadcasts. Tremendous guy, great insight. He actually has great insight on the A.J. Brown situation. He has advice, believe it or not, for the Eagles on how to handle the A.J. Brown situation and get him going. I love Lomas. He has great stories, including, if you remember, 1995 playoffs, Eagles-Lions. He made a prediction that the Detroit Lions were going to come into the vet and destroy the Philadelphia Eagles. It didn't happen, and he caught a lot of flack for it from Eagles fans. He was telling me this great story of a 12-year-old Eagles fan at the vet chewing him out, telling great stories. Of course, as this week Dan Campbell said, he remembers coming to the vet as a player and having batteries thrown and being spit at, which is, look, disgusting. But he told some great stories. So we caught up with Lomas Brown to get his insight, to talk about Dan Campbell, who, by the way, I think would be an amazing coach in Philadelphia just based on his personality. As much as we love Nick Sirianni, as much as Nick has won the big one, has taken them to 2 Super Bowls, Dan Campbell would be an amazing coach. We talked to Lomas Brown, the Lions legend, about that earlier this week. We taped it because the Lions are en route to Philadelphia as we speak. Let's listen to my one-on-one interview with Lions legend Lomas Brown, who used to block for Barry Sanders. Take a listen. Lomas Brown, what's happening?
I'm good, Jeff. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. I cannot wait for Sunday Night Football. And I've heard a lot of the players talk about it this week, from the Eagles to the Lions. Jared Goff has said that it's had this game circled on his calendar. I know every week's a big week, but when you look at this game, this really felt like Eagles-Lions was going to be the NFC Championship game last year. What is the excitement level from the Lions' perspective on this Sunday Night Football game?
Oh, we're very excited. They are, especially after what I say getting right against the Washington Commanders. As you know, the week before against Minnesota, it was just a bad feel, bad look, bad loss for the organization and the team. And the way they bounced back with Dan Campbell calling plays this week, I think the guys are feeling confident, but they know that this is a different animal than going up against the Commanders. This is a stern test. And, you know, Jeff, I have been saying all year long, because of what type of team we had, that other teams were measuring themselves against us. Now I think I have to reverse that, because I think we want to see where we are going up against a great Philadelphia team, the defending champs. I think this is an opportunity to see where we are at this particular time of the year.
I want to get into that whole Dan Campbell switching it up, taking the play calling away from John Morton, and the Eagles, I feel like, have a similar situation with their offense. It feels like it's struggling. I want to get into that in a second, but I do want to ask you, when you look at these two teams, does this feel like this is 1A and 1B, not only in the NFC, but maybe in the NFL? This really feels like it's the top 2 teams in the NFL, in my opinion, especially in the NFC. I'm not convinced that the Seahawks and the Rams are that, you know, top tier teams. I look at the Lions and the Eagles. Like I said, you know, last year I really thought these were the NFC championship teams.
Yeah, I'll go a step farther and say, man, if these teams look in the mirror, they're basically looking at each other. I think when you talk about defense, offense, special teams, you're talking about the coaching staff. I mean, I think these teams mirror each other. Our approach is we want to be physical at the line of scrimmage. We want to be able to run the ball. That's the same thing that Philadelphia is built on, being physical at the line of scrimmage, being able to run Saquon Barkley. I look at us defensively. We're playing downhill. That's what we want to do with our D linemen and our linebackers. Philadelphia wants to do the same thing, and they do the same thing. So I think we kind of mirror image each other. And you're right. I think we are the top 2 teams in the NFC. And hopefully, you know, at the end of the year, we'll get to find out who's the best team in the NFC, because I do think Philadelphia will be there. And I count on us, the Detroit Lions, being there at the end. The only thing we can't control, and both teams can't control, is just the injury factors And as you know, Jeff, that hit us really, really bad last year. Started a little bit this year. So hopefully we could get a lot of our guys back. But I do think we're mirror images of each other.
So what is the X factor in this game on Sunday Night Football? Where's the advantage? Where's the disadvantage? What do you see right now when you look at these two teams, how this could shake out Sunday night?
Yeah, I mean, I think one area that a lot of people don't talk about will be the special teams. I think you could gain the advantage in special teams, either be it through, hidden yardage, maybe a big kickoff return or something, a punt return, a turnover on special teams. I think that can be huge going into this game. But I think this game is going to come down to the best team that executes. Again, with Dan Campbell being our play caller now, that I thought our offense operated at the highest level so far this year, both in the run game and in the pass game. Calvin Shepard, our defensive coordinator, has been doing a great job with the defense. We called it the Legion of Boom because we've been getting so many guys, having to move so many guys in there that haven't been with the team and had to play with a lot of guys who are not really familiar with us. But he's done a great job of doing what he's had to do. So to me, I think it comes down to the team that makes the least mistakes, both penalty-wise and turnover-wise. I think that's the only advantage I could see where the advantage would lie at.
I have one for you. How about the fans? How about the atmosphere Sunday night? Dan Campbell talked about it on the radio this week in Detroit. He talked about what it's like going into Philadelphia. He was telling this story about how he's had batteries thrown at him. He's been stabbed. And then he told the story about Michael Strahan during a game where an Eagles fan had like a cup of tobacco spit. And this is so gross, but it was thrown at Michael Strahan, and Dan had to back off. From your perspective, as a former player, you played 11 of your 18 seasons with the Lions. You have certainly played, at Veteran Stadium. What is it like as an opposing player coming into Philadelphia, unlike any other place in the league?
It's chaos. That's the word I'll use, is chaos. And a quick story for me is, of course, I made the famous guarantee as a Detroit Lion when Ray Rose.
I love this story. So tell this. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah, when Ray Rose was the coach back then, we came in there in 1995. We came in there on the 7-game winning streak. And, of course, I made the prediction that I guaranteed that the Lions would win this game. It would be over early. And OMG, Jeff, when I got there, I mean, the fans were ready. They were rocking our bus. They had a sign, and they had my name on it, and they had Lomas spelled out, but it had loud, obnoxious. It had all kind of monikers for my name that was put on there. And I'm going to tell you, the worst cussing I've ever taken as an NFL player was from a 12-year-old when we were warming up in the end zone before that game. And I looked up, and his dad was standing next to him. And I asked his dad, I said, "You let your son talk like that?" And he was like, "Yep." I mean, it was that boy called me every name but the child of Jesus. I mean, it was unbelievable. And anytime you go into a place where they have an actual jail inside the stadium with a judge there, you're going into a wild atmosphere. So it was crazy every time I played at the Vet. And luckily with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in 2002, I was part of that team that shut down the Vet after that. So I never got a chance to go to Lincoln, but I know it's going to be a wild atmosphere, whether I'm on the field or off the field.
It's a great story, and that pretty much sums up what it's like for the opposing team. And, the way Dan told it, he wasn't angry. He told it like it was an endearing story, and saying that, and this is what I love about Dan Campbell. And I think Nick Sirianni is a fantastic coach, and I know Dan's a great fit in Detroit, but I always view Dan as Dan would be a great coach for Philadelphia because that
Oh,
blue
yeah.
collar mentality, and Detroit and Philadelphia just as cities are very similar. But when I think about Dan, I'm like, man, he would make a great coach for the Eagles just because he has that mentality. But Dan told the story like it was endearing as if he loves this stuff. Do guys, is there some part of it? I mean, look, nobody wants to be spit on. It is gross. And, you don't feel that behavior and cursing from a 12-year-old. At the same time, as a player, do you get up more for games like that where you're like, I want to silence these guys. I want to send these people packing. Is there something about that as a competitor when you go into a place like that? Or do guys get intimidated when they come into a place like that?
No, I think that I think, like you said, it's that us against the world mentality that you take into a place like that. Because you already know what it's going to be like, especially if you're a vet and you've been there before. You already know it's going to be wild. We know how that atmosphere is going to be. We know they're 100% Philadelphia fans. I think we're going to travel pretty well. And I tell our fans, be ready. Be ready, because, I mean, that is a hostile place. But you take on that us against the world mentality, and if you could go into a place, especially if you could start early in the game and kind of get the crowd sitting on their hands, it's going to bode well for you towards the end of the game. So I know that's what Dan is preaching over there. Look, we got to get in there, and we have to throw the first punch. We can't let Philadelphia throw the first punch. And I know that's some of the things he's going to get these guys prepared for, especially guys who have never been there and never witnessed that type of atmosphere.
Just for the record, that 1995 playoff guarantee when Eagles fans were chewing you out, just for the record, how did that end?
Oh, man, it was 54 to 30-something. I mean, it was bad. I had little Fred Barnett. I had the little wide receiver Fred Barnett. He was running up on me talking noise. Lomas, you shouldn't have said that. But I heard that Ray Rose turned the narrative of what I said. He was like, I know what I said. I guarantee we will win. But in the locker room, I later heard that Ray Rose said, yeah, Lomas is coming in here, some things about your wives and your kids. And I'm like, oh, my goodness, I didn't even bring wives and kids into that. It was just, I guarantee we will win. But Ray Rose, being the masterful coach, the masterful motivator that he was, he had those guys ready to run through a wall. I don't think we stood a chance that game, and quite frankly, we didn't stand a chance that game.
Yeah, and when you do talk about an atmosphere like that, and you have to get involved in a silent count, and I've been out to so many Eagles practices over the years where they're going into Seattle or maybe Kansas City, or even Ford Field is super loud. I mean, Ford Field does not get enough credit for just how loud that place is. As the quarterback talking to the huddle, when it's that loud or there's a silent count, take me inside a huddle like that. Just how difficult is it to hear the quarterback call the play, or if you have to run the silent count, what is the challenge there? And what do you really hear? Are you able to hear the quarterback, call out that play?
No, I mean, that's a great point. And actually, you have to kind of shorten your playbook. To be honest with you, there's certain plays that you won't be able to run because it could be a check with me, or it can be a play that marries up another play, and you have to kind of take that out your playbook because you won't be able to communicate that. A lot of pointing goes on when you're in a stadium like that because, again, like you say, the communication has to be more visual than it is audio because you can't hear. The other thing now is, I'll say it's a tad bit easier these days because remember back in the day when I was playing, if a D lineman flinched or went past the line of scrimmage, he could get back. It wasn't called a neutral zone infraction.
Right.
But if the lineman moved, it was automatically a penalty against us. So that's a small advantage that they have. But I think the thing that happens is, like I say, you shorten your playbook down because there's certain plays, certain looks you won't be able to get to. And then the other thing, like I said, it's going to be more of a visual game, meaning as a tackle, I'm looking in at the center to see who he's pointing at, the Mike linebacker and everything. And a lot of times you just going off feel or you going off instincts to know when you need to go.
Obviously, as an offensive lineman, I'm sure you either hate or appreciate the tush push. And I know Dan Campbell and the Lions are among the teams that are in favor of keeping the tush push. And I love Dan's perspective on it, which is they do something unique. If everybody could do it, they would do it. As a former offensive lineman, can you appreciate just how difficult it is to pull off that tush push?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, think about it. You have to get, and Jason Kelsey did a great job of that. But he's right.
Said he'd probably keep playing if it wasn't for, he's probably joking, but he was kind of saying he would maybe still be playing if it wasn't for that tush push. That took so much out of him. And I don't think people realize when you see it on TV just how difficult. And look, you have a quarterback that can bench, 1,000 pounds.
Right.
But just how difficult that play is.
No, you're right. And the thing about it for offensive linemen, if you think about it, you got to get up under these defensive linemen. And that's hard to do already starting off and everything. Plus, you have to keep your legs moving. And that's a lot of human being on top of you. It's a lot that goes into that play. And you're right. And Dan is right. I mean, if you could pull it off the way Philadelphia has pulled it off and seem to be the only team that's been able to master that, we felt that we had a good offensive line, and we still do have a good offensive line. And even with the offensive line that we have, I don't think we could be as proficient as Philadelphia is with running that tush push. Plus, like you're saying, when you got a quarterback that can squat 1,000 pounds, that really, really helps. So you see all these different versions of how guys try to get through that with tight ends back there pushing and different things, or having the tight end under the center and he's running it. But I just think Philadelphia has worked on that, and that's a play that they mastered. And the only thing I can see is I think the refs have to pay a little attention to them linemen and get just a little quick start on that sometime.
Yeah, but we saw that even on the Packers on Monday Night Football. I mean, they jumped on a previous play, and so I don't know if it's so much on the tush push as it is on any play. I mean, when you're talking about sides, wouldn't that just be on any play? And a lot of people are pointing that out, like, oh, the tush push or offsides. We don't know how to judge it. But at the end of the day, if you're jumping on whether it's a QB sneak or a play action, whatever the play may be, I mean, is there a difference? It doesn't seem like there's a difference to me.
No, it isn't. You're right, Jeff, and you're right. The referees just missed those calls. Those were just calls that they missed on both, like you say, Green Bay and with Philadelphia. So those are just calls that they missed. I know a lot of people, again, because they can't stop it, they're making a big deal about that. And believe me, as a former offensive lineman, if you could get any advantage, if you could get a half a click off before that defensive line, that's going to give you an advantage. And if you can take it and get away with it, you do that. Look, I tell people I held every play. I was just good at holding, and I got away with it. So if you can, you're going to do it.
Yeah, and maybe Barry Sanders owes you a few dinners for that. Although he probably would have juked and deked away from that anyway. He was so amazing. He probably didn't even need that. Somebody that blocked for Barry Sanders. Can you just tell people what that was like? The younger audience, I don't think they realize just. We see the modern day, the Saquon Barkleys and different running backs throughout the league that are special, but Barry Sanders, of course, on a different level.
Oh, my goodness, man. The one thing I learned from Barry, from blocking for Barry, is you had to stay on your block until you heard the whistle. Now, that was the old adage that you always heard, even through Pop Warner, high school and college, block to the whistle. Well, with Barry, that was ever more true because Barry could start off on this side, and the next thing you know, he's behind you. So you didn't never want to be the guy, myself, Kevin Glover, we never wanted to be the guys that got Barry tackled. So you would stay on your block until you heard the whistle, because like I said, you just never knew where Barry was. And you're right, man, just a special running back. And I always tell people, you could Google Barry and YouTube him, and you're gonna see all this highlights. But for us in the that block for him every Monday, and it could be a 2-yard loss, Jeff. I'm telling you, it's going to be the best 2-yard loss you ever seen in your life, or the best 1-yard gain you ever seen in your life. It would always be in film studied on that Monday after a game. It would always be at least 5-6 times you have the clicker in your hand and you'd be like, oh my goodness, how did he do that? So it's not always the big runs that Barry made exciting. Like I said, it's the 1-yard runs, it's the 2-yard loss, and it'll be the best 1-yard or 2-yard loss you ever seen in your life.
You probably, because when you're in it, you're in those moments blocking, you don't see any of this. It's probably that day after, that Monday, that Tuesday, looking at film where you're going, oh my goodness, what did he just do? That's incredible. I'm sure you have, because you played with Barry Sanders, an appreciation for Saquon Barkley. Obviously, you know, his numbers aren't there this year, but what he did last year, what Saquon did last year is just tremendous. And his ability, I mean, he was drawing comparisons to Barry Sanders, and I know that's a very, very tall task, but how much appreciation do you have for someone that played with Barry Sanders for Eagles running back Saquon Barkley?
Oh, a tremendous amount of respect. I did a podcast earlier today, and I talked about the importance of not letting him get started early. That's going to be one of the keys for the Lions, because if he gets started early, his vision, I mean, that's underrated. His vision, I mean, I watch how he sets up blocks. I watch how he could bounce back and find that cutback. You know, all the things that Barry did, a lot of the things that Barry did, and the strength. I mean, again, those guys were similar in build from the legs down, because that's what Barry had, the big thighs and the legs, and they're explosive guys. So it's a lot of similarities between Saquon and what I've seen from a Barry Sanders. Like I said, it's only one Barry Sanders, but I tell you what, Saquon, if you let him get started early in this game and he's able to pick and choose and find his holes and has opportunities to exploit it, it's going to be a long game for us, because, again, you guys are built just the same way we are. We need to get that run game going. That run game allows Jared Goff to get back in the play action pass. It allows those big offensive linemen like Penei Sewell and Taylor Decker to be going downhill, and it allows us to try to control the line of scrimmage, which is what we're going to have to do to win the game on Sunday night.
I don't think people appreciate just how much of a challenge the Lions running backs are. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery. I mean, Gibbs just won NFC Offensive Player of the Week. And, you know, he's both of them are big guys. But what Jahmyr's doing, what Montgomery does, and, you know, look, Montgomery, take away the stats, what he does blocking and everything else. When you look at those two, I mean, you could make the case that they have a better running attack right now compared to the Eagles. And I know Saquon Barkley, you know, gets a lot of credit, but what the Lions are doing, you know, with Jared Goff in that running game has been unbelievable.
Yeah, and I'll say this back to Saquon. That's why I wish they would have let him go for that record last year, because you see how this league is, Jeff. You give a defensive coordinator a year to figure out things, and now you see what. So I wish they would have gave him a chance to break that record last year when he had that phenomenal year. But I think the one thing that surprises people before they play us is the way that Jahmyr Gibbs can run between the tackles. Jahmyr runs with power. Everybody knows about the speed. They know that. You get him out on the edges and he's gone. But the thing I've been most impressed with Jahmyr is the way, of course, his vision is coming along, but the way and the power that he can run between tackles now. He's been doing a great job. And the reason why I think that is because he's had a chance to watch David Montgomery do it. David is a phenomenal runner between the tackles, and he can make guys miss in tight spaces. And I think those are the things that will impress Philadelphia's defensive front, their defense period, when they watch the Lions film, is how well we can run between the tackles as a committee. But just like I say, how well Jahmyr Gibbs is between the tackles. And that's our run game. It's by committee. It's those two guys, Sonic and Knuckles. Those are the two guys that make that run game go along with our offensive line.
Yeah, and when you look at Jared Goff, he's having a tremendous season, and you could make the argument maybe it's his best season. But when you look at Goff, it's similar to me as Jalen Hurts, is that I don't think he gets enough credit around the league. And, people, he's not a top 5 and all that nonsense, which I don't like, because look, you only can have one quarterback, and Goff's been tremendous, Hurts has been tremendous, and won a Super Bowl, obviously. But Goff looks one-dimensional just because he's not Lamar Jackson, he's not Jalen Hurts with the legs. How do you beat Jared Goff? Is it just rushing him? Is it just applying pressure? Is it that simple?
And I'll say this too. The reason why they say these things about Jalen Hurts and about Jared Goff, the one thing you'll hear is, well, they got all these weapons around them. But still, somebody has to get the ball to all these weapons. That's all I've heard about Jared Goff, where he got this run game with Sonic and Knuckles. He got Amon-Ra. He got Jameson Williams. He has Sam Laporta. You hear the saying about Jalen Hurts with all the weapons he has. But somebody still has to get the ball to all these weapons. And right. I think both of those guys do it at a high level. And I think that's the reason why they're kind of dismissed when you start talking about the MVP race, because people think they're just surrounded by all these weapons and they don't make these guys good. They do. And back to your question about Jared Goff, that is the secret sauce. I mean, Minnesota has showed the blueprint. If you're able to get especially that middle pressure on Jared isn't as fluid as Jalen Hurts or a lot of the other quarterbacks with getting himself out of trouble. But the thing about Jared Goff is Jared can read those blitzes. He knows where his hots are, his hot reads are. And if he has the time, if he could get it to his hot reads, he's going to make you pay. He did a lot of that against Washington. Washington tried the same thing against us. After a couple of series, they stopped trying to do it because our guys, A, did a better job up front of blocking and protecting him. But B, Jared, when he got pressure, he was able to find his hot reads. And the thing about it, he's almost like a coordinator out there on the field. So if you're in a bad play, you heard Dan Campbell say that. Jared bailed him out a couple of times this week doing his play calling, because if you were in a bad situation, Jared is smart enough to get us out of that and put us in a better situation.
I'm here with Lomas Brown, former Lions offensive lineman and radio broadcaster, and a few more for you, and I'll let you go. You talked about earlier the change with the offensive coordinator and Dan Campbell calling the plays. Why was that change needed? I mean, the Lions, when I look at what the Lions have done offensively, I mean, you're second in points, 6 in total offense. What is the problem? I mean, I look at Philadelphia, and each team is different. There's been a lot of complaints about the Eagles' offense, that the Eagles maybe need to make a change and have Nick Sirianni calling the plays instead of Kevin Patullo. What was going on, and what has been going on with Detroit and John Morton in his first year that Dan felt the need against the Commanders last week to make that change, and obviously scoring, 44 points? That was, arguably the best offensive output of the season.
And scoring on every drive. We scored at, whether it was a touchdown or field goal, we were able to score on every drive. And I think one that comes down to being more efficient. Okay, what we started seeing under John Morton was we didn't have the deep threat. So guess what teams started doing? They started bringing one of their safeties up towards the line of scrimmage. So we started facing a lot of 8-man boxes. That's what made the run game a little bit more difficult, because you got 8 guys up in the box because they didn't fear us going deep. Even though we had J-Mo, we weren't able to get the ball to him because a lot of his routes, that he was running were streak routes, so they were longer routes. You seen under Dan Campbell, most of his routes were drag routes, shallow drag routes. They were quick hitters. Maybe they was outside quick hitting routes, just to get the ball in his hands a little faster and quicker so he can use his his yards after the catch. I thought Coach Campbell did a great job of mixing it up, meaning we weren't just trying to run between the tackles. We were getting a hat on the hat. Sometimes we were getting two hats on the hat. He was mixing in the zone runs, where Jameer could kind of get it outside. We were running between the tackles. I thought he did a masterful job of having Washington on their heels. And a lot of times when you hear a fresh voice or you get a different perspective on what you've been seeing, and that's what Dan Campbell did. He just wanted to bring a new approach. He's seen things a little different than Johnny Morton seen it. Now, I do think this is going to bode well for Coach Morton. Why? Because he gets a chance to sit back, see what Dan Campbell wants to see, how he wants the offense to look, see how some of the plays he implements. And it was the same thing he did with Ben Johnson. If you remember, Ben Johnson didn't start off calling plays. It was Dan Campbell calling plays. Right. Ben Johnson got a year or so, or 7-8 games to sit back, watch how Coach wanted to construct the offense, how he wanted that offense to look, and Ben just flourished. He just took it to another level. Not take anything away from Ben Johnson because he's a great play caller, but he was able to take Dan Campbell's offense and take it to another level. And I could see John Morton being able to do the same thing. So it's kind of like a fresh voice, a fresh approach. And I just think Coach being on the sideline, he has the feel of guys coming off the field. I mean, as offensive lineman, if you're not running the ball, you making your displeasure known to the offensive coordinator or to whoever's calling the plays. It's kind of hard when the coach is up in the press box. And I'm not saying that he has to come down for that reason, but I just think it was just a whole different approach to the game. And I expect Coach Morton to be back later on in the year. Like I say, Dan just says he wanted to just get a fresh perspective on things.
Yeah, it feels like that's similar to what's going on in Philadelphia. I mean, Kevin Patullo in his first year, the offense, it's not living up to the potential. I mean, the Eagles offense, which is hard to believe, passing offense 25th in the NFL, 23rd overall, although, they're the best team in football in the red zone. It's hard to fathom that the Eagles are arguably the best team in the league, yet they're having so many issues. And, A.J. Brown has been very passive aggressive with things he's saying on Twitch and social media, not directly calling anyone out, but he seems unhappy. Have you ever played with a teammate that has been unhappy, and let's say the team's doing well, and then how do you handle that as a teammate?
But guess what position that normally comes from? I tease Herman Moore all the time. I say the wide receivers, they are divas. That's where they think about it. Think about where it comes from. I mean, because again, because they're so dependent on everything going right around them to be able to get the ball. Think about it. If the offensive line isn't blocking and your quarterback doesn't have time, he can't look downfield to get the ball to those wide receivers. It's so many things that have to go right for wide receivers to flourish and have good game. With a running back, you can just turn around and hand the ball off to him and he can have a good day. The wide receivers are so dependent on the quarterback, and not just the quarterback, the offensive line. So that's where you get a lot of this. Believe me, I played with numerous wide receivers, and anytime there was a complaint, it was coming from those guys and stuff. So I just think the thing with AJ is they just have to get the ball in his hands. It don't have to be deep routes. Every time I see him running a route, it's 15 yards. It seems like it's a 15-yard route or more. It could be a short route and let him do what he can do, just like J-Mo. That was the problem with Jameson Williams, why he wasn't as effective early in the season because we were most of his routes were longer routes. It's nothing wrong with a 5-yard slant, get the ball in his hands and let AJ break some tackles. There's nothing wrong with a wide receiver screen. There's nothing wrong with running the reverse with AJ. Just to get the ball in his hands. I think that's what he's really saying, because he knows he's a weapon. He knows what he can do for this team if he's given the opportunity. But right now, he just feels like he's not being given the opportunities that he needs. So I just think they'll figure it out. I hope they'll figure it out this Sunday night. Right. But I do think they will try to figure it out and get the ball in their weapons' hands, because you think about him, Devontae. You think about some of the guys the tight end, at the tight end position, Saquon. You guys, like I say, mirror what we have here in Detroit. And with all that firepower over there, plus you got a quarterback that can scramble. So you could throw in RPOs when we can't do that because of Jared. So you throw in all that. I do think that the offense should be a little better than they are or have shown so far this season.
Yeah, I guess not if Avonte Maddox has anything to do with it. I wonder if he's in Kelvin Shepard's ear this week. The former Eagles corner won a Super Bowl with the Eagles last year. If he's, tipping off Dan Campbell and the defense on what the Eagles like and this and that. I mean, seeing this team for so many years. And Avonte's a great guy. I don't know if you ever saw, but Avonte, by the way, grew up in Detroit, has a giant Lions tattoo on his arm. He showed us that a couple of years ago when the Lions and Eagles were facing off. I think the Lions were not doing very well back then, but he had a big Lions tattoo. He showed us, and I'm like, wow. I'm like, better that than like the Cowboys star.
Yeah. That's what we do back here, Jeff. So, anytime you switch a team, you're going to give up all the secrets. I mean, I played on 5 different teams, and if we face that team that I formerly was with, yes, sir, you sit down and you take just a quick story. Remember, I finished up with Tampa Bay under Coach Gruden. Well, remember, we played the Raiders in the Super Bowl that year when Tampa won it. Coach Gruden played quarterback that week. Remember, the year before, he was the Raiders coach. That he played quarterback that week of practice for the Super Bowl. He told us everything. I mean, if you listen to that bite from John Lynch was like, it was just like we practiced, because Coach Gruden played Gannon in practice, and he was like, if he does this, they're going to do this. We knew everything the Raiders were going to do. So, yeah, you do that if you go into an opposing team and facing your team that you were with.
So Avonte Maddox is spilling the beans this week.
Yes, sir.
He is yapping and yapping and yapping about what the Eagles and Jalen Hurts and everyone likes. And it is interesting. You guys had C.J. Gardner-Johnson as well a couple years ago. And, the thing with CJ, it feels like he's worn out his welcome everywhere. And now he's with Chicago. We got a game ball this week. And CJ Gardner-Johnson is like a fan favorite in Philadelphia. I know he didn't play much. He got hurt with the Lions when he played with you guys out there. But it seems like the same with CJ Gardner-Johnson. I wonder, did he wear out his welcome everywhere? But it seems like, he's after being on the couch for a month, he's doing great with the Bears. But he's been everywhere. I mean,
Well, he's a Florida Gator, and I'm a Florida Gator, so I have a fond affection for CJ. And to me, that's a guy that wants to win. That's a guy that's a winner. Think about all the teams he's been on. They've won, and he is a winner. And I'm telling you, that passion runs deep. I would rather have a guy that's overly passionate than a guy that I have to jack up or get ready to play a game. And that's what CJ brought each and every week. Remember, we had the ski mask. Why? Because of CJ. He had everybody around Detroit wearing ski masks. So, I mean, he's just a passionate player. And that's where you want your passion to come out. Yeah, maybe it wears thin on some people, but if they want a passionate ball player, if they want somebody that buys in 100, not just 100%, but 110%, then CJ Gardner is their guy.
All right, I've kept you way too long. I just want to I know you didn't do so well years ago with predictions, but give me a prediction, Sunday Night Football, Eagles, Lions.
Well, I do expect it to be a lot more scoring than what I seen from them against Green Bay. That was hard to watch. I'm gonna tell you right now.
Yeah, but there was something charming. There was something charming about it in the sense of it was, and I think the announcers talked about it, Joe Buck and Troy Aikman. It was one of the most exciting, for whatever reasons, scoreless first halves. I mean, it was.
Yeah, it was, but it wasn't to me. I was like, my goodness. Yeah, it was just, of course, they called it a defensive battle. So, I've gotten spoiled now that I'm up in the booth. I like to see points put up, and I think that's what we're going to see. I think you're going to see two teams that go at it, like I say, two teams that mirror each other. And I'm looking for maybe like a 28-35 victory. I'm leaning our way on the victory. Okay. And like I say, it could come down to the end. I think this game is going to get played out all 4 quarters, and it could be a turnover. It could be a bad penalty that can kind of sway the game. But I'm looking at them definitely putting up way more points than we seen with that 10-7 Monday night game.
Oh, let's hope so. Eagles fans will not be too happy if
I know. well, look, they know I'm not a good predictor, so they know I'm not good at that, so they shouldn't be too unhappy with me.
Well, hopefully, Eagles fans aren't yelling at you on Sunday night at Lincoln Financial Field when the Eagles and Lions go head-to-head. And who knows, maybe at the end of the day, this will be the NFC Championship game down the road come January. We will find out, but certainly the top 2 teams, in my opinion, not only in the NFC, but really in football. It should be a great game Sunday night. I really appreciate the time and great insight, great stories. Thanks so much. Safe travels to Philadelphia.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right. Thanks, Lomas.
Okay, we're back live here on Bet Parx Saturdays, live from the Sportsbook at Parx Casino in Bensalem. I'm Jeff Skversky alongside my producer, Andrew Frazier. Great insight there. My favorite part, obviously, the Eagles fan stories as well as feeding A.J. Brown the ball. We've talked a lot of football on this show. I want to talk Phillies baseball. I want to get into the Phillies. Who better to talk to than a Phillies legend? Let's bring in, how about 5-time All-Star, World Series champion, 2-time Gold Glover, Manager of the Year, Phil's Wall of Famer, Larry Bowa. Larry, how are you today?
Hey, Jeff. Everything's good. How are you doing?
Great to see you, Larry. Obviously, last night you guys held the Darren Daulton Foundation Gala in Center City. It's been 8 years since we lost Darren Daulton to glioblastoma, a brain tumor. It's been quite some time, but Larry, you were there last night. Why do you think this is still going strong and Darren's name continues to live on?
Well, first of all, I think what Darren meant not only to the Phillies, but the Philadelphia area in particular, a great leader, a great player for the Phillies, went way too soon, obviously. But I think a lot of it, of why it's going so strong is his wife, Amanda. She's kept the legacy going, and last night was a tremendous affair. A lot of Phillies came, ex-Phillies. Murph did a good job emceeing it. I'm sure they raised a lot of money. I know they had some bids going out for trips and everything. I don't know the amount of money they raised, but it's for a great cause. And, bringing up the guys that played here that end up passing away from brain tumors is unbelievable.
Yeah, there's so many of them. It's awful. I mean, from Tug McGraw to
Johnny
Vuk.
Oates,
Vuk,
Brett, David West. I mean, there's a lot of guys that, and all in their early 50s, which is a shame. But it was a tremendous event. They did a great job. The Bellevue did a great job where we had the event, and the turnout was tremendous.
It certainly was, and the Darren Daulton Foundation gives grants to people suffering from brain tumors, glioblastoma, that went through or going through what Darren, lost his life to. Larry, when you hear stories from
the Darren Daulton Foundation and the impact it's having on others still to this day. What does it mean to you when you hear stories last night, how it's helping people in the Philadelphia community and all around the country? What does it mean to you to know that he still has that impact and what the foundation does?
It means a lot, Jeff. And you know, most of these people that get this terrible disease with the hospital bills, rent, all expenses, they just can't do it with insurance companies the way it is right now, sky high. And the foundation literally helps these people along the way, because the last thing they want to do is worry about how am I going to pay this or how am I going to pay that. They want to get their spouse or whoever has the brain tumor taken care of, and the Daulton Foundation has done that, and hopefully it can continue to do that and even bring in more money. I mean, last night's event didn't shock me, but it was a nice turnout, and if we can continue to move on down the road like this and maybe do that a couple times a year instead of just once a year, it would be beneficial to a lot of people that come up with this terrible, terrible disease.
Yeah, and I love that Darren Daulton's name continues to live on here in Philadelphia and the work that goes on behind the scenes with the Darren Daulton Foundation. I loved watching Dutch play. I mean, Larry, after you and Schmitty and Tug and Steve Carlton, I mean, Dutch was, you know, the face of the Phillies.
Yeah, there's no question. And, you know, everyone, you know, sometimes they think leaders have to hit 300 and hit 40 home runs. He didn't hit that high, but he got big hits for us. Great catcher, great communicator. You know, he was one of those guys that if he didn't like something in the clubhouse, he would let him know. And we had a bunch of guys in '93, as you well know, that might have been tough to get along with in that. But Darren and the rest of the coaches and Jim Fregosi sort of smoothed that out, but Darren did a lot of that behind the scenes. No question about that.
Yeah, and you know, I heard Gary Sheffield recently talk about the '97 Marlins when Darren was traded to the Marlins in '97, and Gary was saying, at first I didn't like Darren because he got into a fight with Doc Gooden, his uncle, years prior, and then he's like, you know, Darren won over that locker room in 2 seconds. You know, he was an outsider traded to try to get the Marlins over the hump, which he helped do. And to hear that from Gary Sheffield was really a testament to what Darren Daulton was like behind the scenes.
Yeah, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Jim Leland was the manager of that team. And he told me that Dutch was there for a couple days and he had a clubhouse meeting. You know, the only way they knew him was playing against him, but they realized how big an impact he meant to that ball club, and they went on to win the World Series. So that was a big pickup, and he gets people's attention real quick if you don't play the game the way you're supposed to play the game.
All right, let's talk some baseball. Let's talk World Series. Dodgers obviously eliminated the Phillies. You know, it's been a tough month or so. We see the Dodgers go on and play this unbelievable brand of baseball, win the World Series in what is arguably one of the greatest World Series in my lifetime that I've ever witnessed. Dave Dombrowski said that he believes the Phillies are close to the Dodgers. A part of me, though, feels like maybe it feels like they're not. What is your assessment of where the Phillies stand today and just how close they are to becoming champs, even though they were eliminated early in the playoffs?
Well, I think they're close, but there's obviously a missing ingredient. I can't put my finger on it because the talent is there. The last 4 years we've come up, well, I should say 3. We went to the World Series with Houston, and Houston was a better team. They beat us. But the other times, I really feel in my mind, we should have advanced. The teams we played, I thought we were better than, and we just didn't get over the hump. And getting back to what you said about the World Series, it was a great World Series. But if you really analyze that, Toronto outplayed the Dodgers in every aspect of that series, and yet they came up short. So there's a little bit of luck involved. There's getting a break when you need it. There's an umpire's call, whatever it is. But the Dodgers definitely deserved it. Hey, they came up big. They were down in that Game 7. They came back, tied it up, and eventually won the ball game. But I think there's when I say a missing ingredient, whether it be a player, it's hard to put your finger on because the talent is all over the field there. When we take the field, I don't think there's a team that we should take the field against that we're saying, oh, we're in trouble here. And if you look back at that Dodger series this year, you know, Kirkring had a tough play. I personally would like to have seen somebody hit a home run and the way that game ended, because Kirk Green's a great dude. He works hard. It was one of those plays. He got caught up in the moment. I don't want to say he panicked, but he hurried everything. He had to play at first base on that comebacker, and it just didn't work out. It sort of reminds me of in the mid-'70s, all the years we won, and we had kept playing the Big Red Machine and the Dodgers and coming up short. And then finally in '80, we got over the hump. So hopefully, keep our fingers crossed. I do think, Jeff, I think there's going to be a different look this year. Now, I don't know who's going and who's coming, but it sounds like reading baseball articles now that he's trying to change the makeup a little bit at the ball club. Obviously, the number one guy, I think, this is me, that you got to sign is Schwarber. He means so much, not on the field, but off the field, in the community. He's one of those guys that he's going to get some big offers, and it's just going to be a matter of how high we want to go or how much we want him. And I know John Middleton and Dave, they want him in that clubhouse.
Yeah, and you question the missing ingredient, what that may be. It's interesting you say Schwarber, because I look at JT Realmuto as, he's obviously the glue behind the plate. What he does with that pitching staff. Dave Dombrowski said he probably cannot sign everybody. I mean, look, you have Kyle Schwarber, JT Realmuto, Ranger Suarez.
Right.
Sounds like maybe a Ranger could be the odd man out. Where do you think they go, and what do you think they should do in free agency? I mean, listen, part of me says bring them all back, because it feels like you're in that situation you were kind of in 2012, where after they had that great 08 run, 9, 10, 11, you have all these stars, and even though there's something not clicking, I mean, what are you going to do? Get rid of all these stars? That doesn't necessarily make sense either. So where do you think the Phillies go in free agency?
Well, if it was my checkbook, I'd sign all three of them, but it's not my checkbook.
You don't have a checkbook that big?
I think no. Those are higher up people. The three guys that you mentioned are all integral parts of our team, and they've all had successful seasons. The one guy that I think might be out, because the value is going to be so high, is going to be Ranger. You get a pitcher like that goes deep into ball games. He's going to get, when you give him the ball, it's going to probably be in the 7th inning before you take him out. And when you look at situations now, those kind of guys are rare, because usually pitchers go 5 innings and they're out of there. But Ranger's the kind of guy who's going to get a lot of action on the free agent market. There's no doubt in my mind. If we could keep JT and Schwarber, that would be great. Again, I don't know what our salary cap, I shouldn't say cap, what our salary limits are going to be this year. That's going to be up to John and Dave. But it'd be great to sign 2 of the 3 guys. And I want to say that Schwarber and JT probably are their priorities. I mean, I'm sure Ranger is too, but they're realistic, knowing that Ranger's going to create a lot of interest just because he's a pitcher. And that old saying is, you never have enough pitching, and if somebody can grab Ranger, that's going to be a huge pickup for them.
Yeah, certainly the emergence of Christopher Sanchez, unfortunately makes Ranger, in a weird way, not as valuable and is not as much, it feels like, as a priority. But maybe, look, the other odd man out really feels like it's going to be Nick Castellanos, and maybe that's run its course. Larry, you were a manager of the Phillies. You've been in the game your entire life. Obviously, it's no secret that Nick was having issues with being kind of a platoon player, taken out of games. Max Kepler was, complaining a little bit about that as well. He thought he was an everyday player. As a manager, how do you handle those situations behind the scenes, and how do you feel like Topper did with all that?
I think Topper did a great job. I think you have to be honest with guys when you start saying we're going to platoon. I really believe that Tom's did a great job with the communication skills there. I go back to that '93 team, and we had a couple platoon situations, but those guys accepted the role. There's not a lot of guys who will accept a platoon situation. So when you're used to playing every day, and all of a sudden the manager or coaches say, hey, you're now a platoon player, that's going to affect them in a negative way. There's no question about that. But I think the bottom line, when you're a manager, you got to do what's best for the entire ball club, not what's best for Cassidy or what's best for whoever you're platooning
right
with. And you got to explain to them, this is the reason we're doing this. And some guys accept it. Like I said, those guys in '93 with Inky and Izzy and Duncan and those guys, they accepted that role. And if you don't accept it, it can create some issues. And I think I think Dave sort of made it out. He's thrown it out there that Cassie will probably be with another team. Now, are we going to be able to get a favorable matchup when you make a trade like that? Are you going to get dollar for dollar, or are you going to have to pay some of the money? Those are situations that Dave's going to have to figure out. But just by reading the articles and everything, I would think that Cassie probably will be with somebody else next year.
Yeah, it certainly sounds that way. And look, it's probably a good thing, too, if you can infuse some energy, some young energy into this lineup. And, of course, you need your stars to perform.
Right.
A lot's been made over this Bryce Harper situation. In the end-of-the-year press conference with Dave Dombrowski, he questioned whether Bryce can be elite again. You pay attention. You know what's going on. When you hear that, do you think the Bryce situation, that was taken out of context? Do you think that maybe Dave was sending a message? Do you think Dave was just being honest, or it came out wrong? What is your take on the Bryce Harper situation? Because, listen, I understood what Dave was saying. I also question whether or not were you trying to send a message to these hitters that you guys need to step up. You guys are the stars here. We need that big hit.
I really think that Dave was just, he made a statement. I don't think it was that out of hand, but if you were on the other end of it and you didn't hear the whole interview, you might say what Harp said. I think basically what he meant to say is because of what Harp's done in his career, it wasn't an elite Harper year, which it wasn't. It was still a real good year.
Right.
Don't get me wrong. I'll take that year with a bunch of guys. But the fact that, and when he mentioned the word elite, he's talking about the top 5 guys in baseball, and Harp has been that. Harp will bounce back. There's no question about this. Now, will this motivate him? I don't know, but I know he'll have a better year. He missed close to a month of the season, and you still look at his numbers. They were still outstanding numbers. So I expect, whether it motivates him, I don't think he needs motivation, to be honest with you. This guy's been in the spotlight since he's 14 or 15 years old, and I really believe he's going to come out there swinging this spring training and carry it over into the season. The key word there is staying healthy. And, getting back to our makeup of our team, we also have a question mark, and it sounds like everything's good with him, is Wheeler. Will he be ready to go in April?
You feel for him. You feel for him going through that. It's not it's not a baseball injury, and you worry. Zach's a great guy. He's of course an amazing pitcher. He has a beautiful family, and you think about what Zach has been dealing with behind the scenes.
Right, and that injury, it's one of those injuries where you see some guys that have had it have come back, others have not been. They've come back, but they haven't been where they were previous to the injury. Personally, what I would do with Zach is I would keep him down to spring training in the month of April, because going through that surgery and everything, why would you come up here in the cold, damp weather and pitch from opening day on? Even though he might be I'm sure he's going to say he's ready. I'd make sure he's 100% ready. Keep him down till the weather warms up here, because our rotation is still good. We still have guys at the top that can do tremendous. I mean, Luzardo and Sanchez, this have been breakout years for them last year. They did a tremendous job, and I see nothing but good things ahead for them. And then you still have Aaron Nola, who I thought at the end of the year pitched very good, and you have Walker. Painter's coming up.
Yeah.
Who I think it takes usually over a year. People think, why wasn't he up? A lot of times it takes a little bit more than a year. One thing about it, I watched him pitch at AAA. His velocity's there. The one issue that was not where it should be was the command. And if you talk to people that had Tommy John, that's the last thing that comes. So I expect big things out of Painter this year. He's going to be healthy. He's had over a year with that surgery, and he's a great kid. He works hard. I expect him to have a pretty good year this year.
Yeah, well, look, let's hope that the Phillies have some infused energy into this club. Things turn around next season. I like the fact that they're bringing back Topper. I like the fact that it feels like they're going to bring back this core. They're not going to blow it up, and that this team will be, hopefully having a parade down Broad Street next year.
I agree. Bringing back. You talk about bringing out some youth. Crawford, to me, Justin Crawford.
Sure.
Unless something happens, I think he's going to be in our lineup. And if you watch this guy play, he's electric. He brings a lot of energy to the ball club. He's over a 300 hitter no matter where he plays. He plays good outfield. I consider him like a left fielder, but could he play center? No question. I agree with you. You need that good combination of veteran guys, plus you want to bring up the new guys that are young. And we got a kid named Miller Aiden Miller that's not going to be far away. I'm not saying he's going to open up with us, but he'll be knocking on the door before the year is over. There's no question about
And
that.
that's what you need. I mean, look at the Blue Jays. I mean, they had some guys come up from AAA, some guys even from Single A, right? I mean, that made a huge impact. Yeah. Which is an amazing story. And he's a local guy. He's, from Pottstown, from,
right.
The Philadelphia area, grew up a big Phillies fan. So you need that young energy. Well, listen, Larry, thank you so much for your time. Great insight on the Phillies and, of course, all the work you do with the Darren Dalton Foundation. Had a great gala last night in Center City raising money and awareness for brain tumors to help those that were impacted the same way Darren Dalton was.
All right, Jeff, thank you very much. And let's go Phillies. And hopefully this is the year we have that, as you said, another parade down Broad Street.
Let's hope so. All right, Larry, thank you so much for your time.
Take care, Jeff.
All right, thanks, Larry. Phillies legend Larry Bowa joining us at Bet Parx Saturdays live from the Sportsbook at Parx Casino in Bensalem. Of course, if you want to give the gift of entertainment this holiday season, tickets to see national headliners at the Excite Center at Parx Casino make a great gift. Parx Casino is something for everyone. Entertainment taste, all of your entertainment taste. Some of the lineup looks like this coming up over the next few months. You have classic rockers, Grand Funk Railroad, 16-time Grammy winner David Foster, Catherine McPhee coming up at the end of January, as well as Marshall Tucker Band and Jefferson Starship. In February, the Broadway star Alan Cumming Uncut, his new one-man cabaret show. And then you have the Generations Piano Men tribute to Elton John and Billy Joel. And a big one in March 14th, comedian Tracy Morgan is coming to Bensalem along with Kathleen Madigan. The Day Drinking Tour coming up in April, followed by Melissa Etheridge. Tickets still available in December. The acapella sounds of Straight No Chaser on December 5th, as well as December 6th. Comedian Ken Jeong, remember him from the Hangover movies? He will be here as well as the Get the Lead Out Ultimate Zeppelin Tribute. ParxCasino.com/entertainment. You can get your tickets there. You must be, of course, 21. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. So great insight from Larry Bowa, Lomas Brown. And let's get back to the Eagles' big Sunday night football against the Lions. 7-2 Philadelphia Eagles against the 6-3 Detroit Lions. Eagles are the favorites by a, 2.5 point favorites are the Philadelphia Eagles. My next guest on the show today, longtime NFL Network reporter Omar Ruiz. He does a great job covering the league. We get into lots of topics around the league. Of course, we're in the bubble here in Philadelphia. Lots of frustrations about the Eagles, but are the Eagles an elite team? Are the Eagles the best team in the NFL despite the offensive issues? We're going to talk about that with Omar Ruiz, as well as the future of the Tush Push. A lot of conversations have been made over the last year or so about the Tush Push. He has a great perspective about that, as well as will we be seeing more games in Europe, international games? We will find out. Let's talk to Omar Ruiz from NFL Network. Take a listen. Omar Ruiz from NFL Network. What's happening?
Jeff, not only am I from NFL Network, I am in NFL Network, and we are coming to you live from the Red Zone studio. It's the quietest place on the NFL Network campus, Monday through Saturday. And then, of course, on Sunday, millions watch Scott Hanson do his thing from that green screen behind me there. But here for this, it is very quiet.
I don't know what's more impressive about what Scott does. By the way, Scott, he used to work in Philadelphia. He was a sportscaster. Yep. I don't know what's more impressive, the fact that he can just rattle off all these games, all this excitement for, 10 hours, or he doesn't have to go to the bathroom. I'm not sure what's more impressive, that he doesn't drink a single thing and can talk that long.
Yeah, Scott is as good as there gets as Red Zone, as a broadcaster, but his bladder is even better. I'll share a funny story with you. During COVID, I was the backup Red Zone person, just in case, Scott Hanson ever tested positive, whatever, we wouldn't skip a beat. And so during the preseason of that year, I got to do the run through, the rehearsal. Scott was out of town. So I'm there. We're on a, Friday night when there's 7 games happening at the same time in the preseason. And during the second half, when you have, the fifth stringers playing, they're going to get cut the next week. You have no idea who these guys are. Usually, as Scott did it, as I did it, when the starters are in, you can easily identify every team's, talent, offensive weapons, sort of thing, kind of on recall instantaneously. But now we're into the depth chart, and we are just making up names at this point. It's Jeff Skversky with the tackle for the Lions. Well, he's going to make the team with that kind of effort, and just kind of going through all the names. So, it was a fun thing, but Scott is as good as it gets. He does awesome here, and it's right here behind us.
Nice. Very nice. Obviously a big weekend. What are the big stories at NFL Network and around the league right now that you're covering today?
Well, we have some huge matchups in the late window, and I would imagine that CBS with the national window, with the Broncos hosting the Chiefs in a major AFC West showdown. It seems like the Chiefs have been so good over the years that we haven't had a mid-season showdown in that division because they are so head and shoulders above everybody the last few years, that CBS has that single national window. But in the NFC, the Rams and Seattle in that same window have a huge showdown in the NFC West. Both games in that late window could have a big say on who actually takes home the number one seed in the conference and gets the bye. Similarly, in the night game with Philly hosting Detroit, a game that I thought we all were going to see in the NFC Championship game last year, it's finally going to happen here in Philadelphia. Both teams coming in with great records, and that game too will go a long way in deciding the NFC. So some big, huge matchups. It seems, Jeff, like it's been a couple weeks where maybe the matchups haven't been as enticing. I remember last week every game was a double-digit score seemingly, except for a couple in the NFL. But I think this week we're in for some titans of matchups on Sunday, especially later in the day.
Yeah, I'm certainly biased. This Eagles-Lions matchup, cannot wait for it. And, hearing from the Eagles, hearing from the Lions, you get that impression as well. I mean, the Lions, Aiden Hutchinson said this game's been circled on the calendar all year. It's a must-win. Even Dan Campbell admitting today that he thought that this really would be the NFC Championship game last year, and a lot of people did. Nobody really expected the Commanders and Jaden Daniels to go into Detroit, Ford Field last year and do what they did. When you look at these two matchups, and, look, there's some surprising teams out there like the Patriots and the Colts and even the Broncos. But when you look at this, I really view Eagles-Lions really as the 1-2, not only in the NFC, but maybe in the NFL. What is your take on where the Eagles and Lions are coming into this game and the overall picture in the NFL?
Yeah, I agree with you in that I think this is a measuring stick game for each team, because I think I'm one of those people that believe that the Eagles are still the team to beat. I think they have all the pieces, the weapons in place to repeat as Super Bowl champions. And I think if you're going to win the Super Bowl this year, you're going to have to go through Philly at some point. And I think a team like Detroit, who is going to put points on the board, the Eagles are going to have to get that offense right. And this is one of those games that it's going to demand for them to do so. And I think they will. I think eventually they'll solve their issues. Philadelphia this year kind of reminds me of, from an offensive standpoint, the way the Seahawks Legion of Boom defense used to be, that they weren't always on the same page. Sometimes it took half the season to get things going, but in the end, they're always right there making Super Bowl runs and really a force. And I think that'll play out for Philadelphia in that they'll get it together. A.J. Brown voicing his concerns consistently. They'll get that fixed. The offense will roll at some point. It's a matter of when they do so, and they hope that it's not too late for Detroit. On the other hand, obviously, they fell short, like you mentioned, that upset against the Commanders last year. So they felt that last year was their time, that it was their time to make that Super Bowl run. Well, they have the opportunity again, and if they can go into Philadelphia, I think they'll command respect throughout the league, that they are a force once again, and they are a legitimate Super Bowl contender.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like anyone's happy to see what the Eagles, at least in Philadelphia, and look, we're in a bubble, right? So you see all the negatives, and Philadelphia, we like to focus on some of the negatives, but we saw everything they did against Green Bay, and look, that's an impressive, ugly game for the Eagles defensively, but offensively, I mean, you got A.J. Brown complaining, and when you look at the Eagles, 25th in passing offense, 23rd total offense. When you look at the talent, it doesn't really match the stats and where they stand. What's the national view of the Philadelphia Eagles? You're saying they're the team to beat, but it doesn't really feel like it in Philadelphia. Could you maybe calm everyone down perhaps just a little bit?
Yeah, because I think for the Eagles, like I mentioned, the pieces are in place. They have a Super Bowl caliber quarterback, Super Bowl winning quarterback. all the weapons that they have there, haven't changed since last year when they were a juggernaut. The offensive line is still as good as, maybe not as ever they've been, but they still have Jeff Stoutland. They still have all that talent up front. So, they're going to be a factor. Getting a new offensive coordinator and Kevin Patullo, sometimes it just takes time for the offense to gel, and every team is different. But I think because they are the Super Bowl champions, because they are in the fishbowl of the Philadelphia media market, they do get so much more attention, and they're not necessarily allowed from week to week to show that improvement unless it's dramatic, unless they put 40 points on the board. Then they're going to be under some heavy criticism. But again, you kind of take the lens out that I think they will find, what's wrong. They will find consistency, and they will be a force once again. I remember, last year when they got rolling in that second half, there was that stretch maybe from week 11 to week 12 through 14, 15, somewhere as the second half got underway, they were rolling through people. Nobody was even close. And that happened again in the playoffs. So I think that they will find it, at some point, and they have to be consistent with it, because obviously in the playoffs, you could be one and done if you have a bad Sunday. But I think they have the remainder of the season to figure it out, to find that consistency. And I think it starts against Detroit. I think sometimes when you're the Super Bowl champions, and going back to that comparison with the Seahawks, sometimes they have to find some sort of adversity, some sort of outside, motivation to get themselves going, because they are the Super Bowl champions. Their juices don't get flowing until January, so to speak. And I think a game like Detroit on Sunday Night Football, when all the criticism has been thrown their way, is the force, the galvanizing force that can get them going and really spark a second half run for them.
This kind of sums up a few stories that sums up Philadelphia Eagles fans and really Philadelphia sports fans. Earlier this year, everybody's complaining. And you think about that Rams game to take you back on that blocked field goal to win it, touchdown by Jordan Davis. That entire first half, if you were listening to the people in the stands and the Eagles fans, you would think this football team has never won a game, let alone just coming off a Super Bowl, having won 2 in the last, 8 years. You would think this team has never won a single game, let alone 2 Super Bowls over the last decade. And then, bam, second half, they get on a run. Unbelievable, one of the best comebacks in NFL history, really. And then I really do think about when the Eagles won their first Super Bowl, the first week, opening week against the Atlanta Falcons, the Eagles get booed off the field at the half against Atlanta. They had just raised the Super Bowl first ever banner at Lincoln Financial Field. And people were booing in the first half. They're like, come on, they just got their rings, relax. And the other one was when the Phillies won the World Series in 2008. They made a run, by the way, against your Dodgers that year. Then in 2009, opening day, first game at home, the Phillies are getting booed, 3 innings in 90 minutes after getting their World Series rings. And I'm just going, can we just give them a little slack? Can we cut them a little break? But again, we're in that fishbowl where nothing is ever good enough. And I know the Eagles feel the same way in the sense of Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown. They just want it to be better. And you're certainly a belief that it will eventually click. And look, they're sitting pretty. They're essentially the number 1 seed in the NFC right now.
And I think something that we don't talk about enough, because we're so focused on style points and how pretty their offense can look, and the fact that they're not living up to those expectations is what we focus on. But they're learning how to win in different ways. And I think that for as long as the experience that the Eagles have, as long as this core with Nick Sirianni and A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith, as long as they've been together, they've won consistently. But each team, each year is different. And the 2025 Eagles are learning how to win close games. They're fighting through adversity. They're still coming up with W's at the end of the day. And I think that is something that we cannot undersell in an NFL season. And I say the same thing about, you mentioned the Broncos a little earlier. The Broncos, a lot of people are perplexed that Bo Nix hasn't maybe taken that next step here in the second year. But this is a team that consistently finds way to win in the fourth quarter. And once we get to January, when they've been in those struggles during the year and they find ways to win in the fourth quarter, even when they're not at their best, those are some valuable lessons that you learn during a regular season that can show up come playoff time. So even though there's been a lot of negativity, a lot of negative energy around the Eagles this year, they are finding ways to win. And that's something that we might not see until the playoffs. but could be huge down the stretch.
Yeah, Bo Nix, he's smart. He said he deleted his social media this week. He talked about that. Maybe AJ Brown should delete the social media and the video games late at night. Because I think, why air out all the grievances? Among the other grievances with the Eagles really has been this silly debate to me. Is Jalen Hurts a top 5 quarterback? And I always go, does it matter? Like, Jalen Hurts is your quarterback. He's a Super Bowl MVP. He's led you to 2 Super Bowls in the last few years. What else do you want? And can you even get the other quarterback, right? Like, you're not getting Patrick Mahomes. He's not coming here. So what is this silly argument?
Yeah, I don't see that at all, because when Jalen Hurts in the biggest games of his life, even the Super Bowl that they lost, he showed up and had one of the greatest games of all time. And he consistently shows up. And what I'll say about, their offense, aside from the inconsistency, inside the locker room perspective, I think they genuinely don't care about that sort of stuff. Now, they want to have the cohesiveness, they want to have the consistency of playing good offensive football. But as far as the stats and what it means for his standing in the league, I really don't think they care about that.
Micah Parsons earlier this year said everybody around the league hates the tush push. And I'm sure it's going to be an even bigger conversation in the offseason, and maybe another team's going to try to, spearhead the possibility of trying to get it out of the league again. What do you think the national perspective is around the league, among other teams, other players, about the tush push? Is it really hated?
I don't know if it's hated, but I think people don't want it in there. And I think the momentum now is it's so hard to be officiated, and they do the slow-mo on the false starts that should have been called. And,
but that could be, but hold on.
You do that with any play. You're right. Yeah, I agree with you.
Okay. Yeah.
I agree with you. I'm old school. I'm more of the mind that, hey, don't complain about it. Just stop it or try to figure it out. And they're using that. They're using their offensive line. They're using their strength of their, physically gifted quarterback to execute a play to a high level. And in this day and age in the NFL, where it's a game of inches and there's so much parity, when you can find an edge, you have to take advantage of that and really exploit it. And the Eagles have done that very well. But I think when you're talking about the national perspective, I think, the avenue this offseason will be not a health and safety issue, because I think that's where last year, from the ownership perspective, when they're voting whether to keep it or not, a lot of the people complaining were like, hey, it doesn't look right. And that didn't really, sell. Then it was like, oh, there's health and safety concerns, but the statistic on that don't really sell. Now it's so hard to be officiated. So that'll be the angle probably this offseason in trying to get rid of it. Will that be enough for it to pass? We'll see. But it sounds like there is momentum around the league to kind of shut it down. And I think probably more from a league perspective, not necessarily national, fan perspective, but from a league perspective, I don't think they enjoy the conversation around it, dominating, the NFL landscape. They want people talking about the players and the excitement of the games and everything, not necessarily a heavily litigated play, so to speak, week after week.
Well, it's interesting because their conversion rate, the Eagles' conversion rate on it, is actually down. It's the lowest it has been, over these handful of years. But I would make the argument that, Jalen Hurts can squat so much that even if he runs a straight QB sneak and if he's not pushed, there have been times where he's not really pushed. It's not going to make a difference. And what we were talking about earlier, the offside situation, that's on the refs on any other play. And that, to me, shouldn't be harder to officiate that point in it. And so I do have a hard time, going, how do you say just get it out of the league? Because at the end of the day, it is some people say it's a rugby play, but Jordan Mailata, who grew up playing rugby, just learned how to play football about 2 minutes ago, and now he's a start-off tackle. Even he says it's not even close to rugby. So look, maybe it will get the momentum. It felt like it was close until, Jason Kelsey came in at the league meetings, the owners meetings, and, came in for that kill shot. But it is interesting to hear that debate around the league. And, maybe it's like this sexy conversation in a way, Philadelphia and this and that. But I don't see a big issue with the play. And I like Dan Campbell's mentality, which is the old school approach. Just stop it. Just stop it. What's the problem?
Yeah. And I think ESPN did a good job on the Monday night game when they showed Green Bay doing a sneak, and it looked like they started early before the snap. So it's just something that happens in football. Officials miss calls and everything like that on any given play. And it's not exclusive to the Philadelphia Eagles, but they have certainly taken advantage of their strength in that to execute it at a high level. And I would like to see it stay in the game, because I do like that physicality and that sort of, machismo, like, hey, if you're not good enough to stop it, then, you better figure it out.
That's right. A few more questions for you if you have the time. I want to ask you, you cover the Chargers a lot. You cover the Raiders. Eagles have those two teams coming up. Obviously, I think the Eagles on paper are better than the Raiders, but look at that Chargers team. That's a big matchup coming up on Monday Night Football. How do you think the Chargers and the Eagles match up, and what could be potentially a, Super Bowl preview?
Well, I think the Chargers philosophically would like to build their team like the Eagles have, just from the inside out, from the trenches, and being physically superior up front, both on the defensive and offensive lines. And we've seen with the Chargers just so many injuries to that offensive line. Joe Alt recently re-injured his ankle. He's out for the season. He was star left tackle, a top 5 pick last year, moved over to left tackle because their star left tackle, Rashawn Slater, was hurt in the training camp and is out for the season. So now they're without their big Pro Bowl tackles. So I think from that standpoint, the Eagles should physically overpower the Chargers, but philosophically, they're a team that wants to match. Jim Harbaugh for years has wanted to play, a physical run, smash mouth style of football, just like they do in Philadelphia. And I think just like they do in Philadelphia, they have the weapons to open up the pass game when appropriate, when necessary. And that's what the Chargers have with Justin Herbert, and now, clicking with Ladd McConkey and Keenan Allen, Quentin Johnson, the rest of that crew. So it should be a fun matchup, but I think ultimately the Eagles and their ability to win in the trenches will be the difference in that game. But the Chargers will want to play physically with the Eagles. I just don't know if they have the horses to do it right now.
Yeah, you did a great one-on-one interview earlier this season with NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell. Obviously, the expansion of games in Europe and all over the world that have been going on the last few years, more and more between Brazil and Germany, London. The Eagles have played in Brazil and in London. How close do you think we are to the NFL really having a team in Europe?
I don't think we're close to that. What I think we're closer to is a 16-game international series every year, where every team plays an international game. Because it sounds like when I was talking, the interview you referenced with Commissioner Goodell, it sounded like when he was talking about Madrid and Berlin and London, obviously Dublin, some of the newer cities this year, that we're going to have games there going forward. It wasn't just a 1-year type of thing, exploration, that they would like to have games there. And then you talk about them being in Melbourne next year in Australia, and a game in 2027 marked for Asia somewhere. So I think eventually Mexico City is going to return to the mix next year once their World Cup renovations to the stadium are fixed there. So you have Brazil, Mexico, London, Ireland, Spain, Germany, Australia, Asia. When it's all said and done, I think we're going to have 16 games. Every team's going to have an international game, and then that will be the regularity on the international front, not necessarily a team, but a full essential season schedule on the international markets. And I think once we get there, I think personally, you have to go to 18 games and maybe 2 buys if that happens. But that's a whole other NFLPA, NFL fight that has to happen before we get to that.
It's so funny because, people complain about how far it is, how long it takes to get to London or Mexico City or, Brazil. And I always go, have you been to Seattle? And I know you go out to cover the Seahawks once in a while. It takes forever, no matter where you're at in the country, probably even San Francisco, to get out to Seattle. And I'm like, how is it that much different than getting out to, to face the Seahawks?
And it's interesting you say that, because that was the Rams' philosophy this year in preparing for their London game against the Jaguars. They played the Ravens, and then they stayed in Baltimore, practiced at Camden Yards, and just sort of got acclimated to the East Coast. And then they flew to London the day before the game. And then they beat the brakes off of the Jaguars, who were there all week. So essentially what Sean McVay simulated was how they would normally practice on the West Coast and then fly to the East Coast to play a game the following day, whether it's in Philadelphia or New York. He just said, yeah, it's no different than flying West Coast to East Coast. We're just going to go from East Coast to London now. And so, to your point, you know, and especially the way the sports science has evolved and the care that the teams take in preparation for that, I think the sort of how far it is and the flight inconveniences, I think will be an excuse that probably doesn't work going forward.
Yeah, you know, the Broncos did something similar. Sean Payton did something very similar when they came to Philadelphia and beat the Eagles. And then there was a story, he did a victory lap with the team bus down Broad Street. Because, you know, Sean Payton grew up in Philadelphia as a kid, grew up a big Eagles, Phillies, Flyers, Sixers fan, drove the bus down Broad Street back to the hotel. They changed, had some dinner, and then they flew out to Europe for their international game. So it is interesting, some of the approaches on how to handle it. Look, one last thing for you. Sunday Night Football, who are you picking? Don't say Lions.
Yeah, well, I would have to pick the Eagles in this one, you know, home field. And like I said, I think at some point a sense of urgency will settle in for the offense. They'll find it. And I think playing a good Detroit team that leads the league in scoring coming in will force the Eagles to get it right. And sometimes that's kind of what you need. You know, it's just you can talk about it as much as you want during the week. But on Sunday, when you have to score more points, you know, the offense, you know, usually can find its rhythm. And I think Philly will do that on Sunday.
Omar Ruiz from NFL Network, we appreciate you joining us. Thank you so much. Great insight, great conversation. Always great to see you, and enjoy the rest of this amazing NFL season.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Appreciate you having me, man. Look forward
All right,
to seeing
good seeing you, Omar. There you have it from NFL Network reporter Omar Ruiz. Great insight from Omar. Give him a follow on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, Omar D. Ruiz. Again, he believes the Tush Push will be banned next season. Something to watch out for with that. There's been a lot of talk, a lot of speculation about that controversial play throughout the NFL. Well, that'll do it for us today on Bet Parx Saturday from Bensalem and Parx Casino. For my producer, Andrew Frazier, I'm Jeff Skversky. We'll see you back here next Saturday. Thanks for watching.
We all silly like the mayor.